Jody, to start with that one, then you as well with the show.
Well, when you say, how do you respond to that? Well, you know, like I said earlier, we should be working together for a common cause, the Republican Party and the Republican Assembly. But me, like I said, being the fighter that I was, I decided to stand up to them. And as you just said, the fallout on it, okay? I ran 4 times for the Republican Executive Committee. And the sitting chair of the Republican Party was who I challenged for a county commission seat, and she refused to give me my seat. But prior to that, I had done E. Clay Shaw's congressional race in Palm Beach County. And so I called him in D.C., and I told him, you know, I'm trying to get a seat on the executive committee because I wanted to make changes in the Republican Party. And he said, just go ahead and go to the next meeting and run again. So I did. And, of course, I won again because when the ballots are being counted, both sides are there. The party was split between myself and the sitting chair of the party. And my people would come back and say, you won the seat again. So the 5th time I ran, and she came out and she made the announcement on stage that I wasn't getting the seat. Wow. 2 men stood up in the audience. To this day, I don't know who they were. But I found out that they were two people from Tallahassee that Clay Shaw had sent to the meeting. And they just stood up when she announced I wasn't getting my seat, and they stood up in the audience and they said, we need to have a private word with you. And they took her off the stage. 5 minutes. She came back and she gave me my seat. I don't know what happened, but I think E. Clay Shaw had something to do with it.
Do you think there's any chance that we will wake up and see that? I mean, we're seeing it in our Florida legislature right now with the governor and with the president. We're supposed to be the model state of the country. We're supposed to be leading the way. Florida, we can arguably say we saved this country from COVID. This country, if Florida had got the governor we were about to get,
exactly,
we would have lost this country. And President Trump stepped in, saved us once more. But now here we are fighting in the legislature. Do you think there's any chance that we will come together and realize that these groups need to work together?
I would like to think so. The thing is what's going on with our state legislatures. The people need to stand up and say this is unacceptable. You know, they spoke loud and clear in November, and our state legislators are not abiding by that, by bucking the system and going up against Governor DeSantis and President Trump's agenda. And we're the ones that need to make the change. And regarding the Republican Party, like I said, I stayed to fight, and we ended up splitting the party. And once again, you're bucking each other, the same as they're trying to do with the Republican Assembly. They're fighting. And I don't know if they have the will. I mean, it's almost kind of like the Democrats. They don't learn from their mistakes. Right. We all should be in there working together, and they don't want to do it. They want to keep fighting us. And that's not the way to win.
Have you noticed lately, Jody, and I ask you this because you started that assembly, have you noticed lately a lot of the elected officials will start endorsing now candidates and saying they're behind them? The last few races we've seen, I've seen that overwhelmingly, even for REC, or the chair of RPOF, I saw constant endorsements coming out. Does that wake you up and scare you a little bit?
Well, you know, I've said it all along. I mean, you look at what happened with President Trump and his election, and I was so angry at different politicians, different groups that would not come out and support him. One thing was about the 2020 election, okay? You stand up for the truth, and we knew what the truth was, okay? But how many of them actually stood up and supported Donald Trump and his accusation that the 2020 election was stolen? It was, plain and simple. The facts are out there. There's no denying it. The left will never admit to it, okay? But that's the whole thing is that my anger comes towards the ones that wouldn't stand up and support him, and now, because he won, they're all out there kissing his Yahoo, you know, to say, oh, isn't he wonderful? Because they want to ride on his shirt tails, you know, and it's not right. I have a big heart, but my forgiveness level on that is about 0.
It's very concerning seeing that trend happen,
yes.
And seeing all of a sudden now the same people that were attacking him now are endorsing him.
Yep.
And I remember this club, when I first got here, was very supportive of President Trump and always has been. Even when we had a great governor, which I love, great governor running for office, y'all stood by President Trump. But now we're seeing the legislator attack both of them, which is very unique, and it's very interesting seeing that. Now, this is a question for both of y'all, and then we want to open it up to the audience. But Dan, you start with this. On the show, we spoke about 2020 election, and Jody just mentioned it. A lot of monkey business that went on there. A lot of strange things. I had a very good friend, one of the first guys that turned himself in Georgia. He was going in filming the bail bondsman, filming the people in the election offices. And he said, Joe, I witnessed it with my own eyes. They had briefcases they were bringing in and counting more votes after the election was over. They were bringing them in. It's like they had them pre-prepared to raise up the vote again. And all of a sudden you woke up the next day and it did that. We know a lot of stuff went on, but you said on the show that you think that this was a divine intervention, that God needed us to see the last 4 years to wake us up, that we needed to see that occur. Let's talk about that a little bit.
Well, look, it's like I just had said that it was only through showing to not just the country, but to the world, the depth of the depravity of the lies and the misrepresentations and the coercion and all their dirty tricks, and I call them commies, right? They're straight up commies. It's all from the commie Marxist playbook. Saul Alinsky and all that. Had he won in 2020, or had they actually counted the real votes and he was put into office, that with the COVID and then all the scandals that were going around, look, his time was divided, right? And he certainly didn't have a mandate from the people. He would have just been bogged down in that stuff. We would have done a couple things, maybe extended the tax cuts, and that's really nice. And, but come 2024, it would have been a different thing. We would not have had the veil lifted to the degree that it was. And you just can't underestimate the power of God's hand on that. Like I said, when God put his hand between the bullet and Donald Trump's head, it was a seminal moment in this election, and I think in the awakening of the country, to watch that man stand up and raise his fists in the air and yell, "Fight." I think that inspired not just the country, but the world. And I would watch things on TikTok, like, these crazy manga animations that they would do, glorifying it. It was beautiful to watch. So we wouldn't have had what we see now. Look, DEI's gone, right? The illegal immigrants, okay, the illegal aliens, let's call them what they are, who feel they have a right to be in our country because for whatever reason they rolled out the red carpet for them. It doesn't work that way in a sane world. And what we're getting to experience and to watch is just sanity being introduced back into our society. I was talking with Steve the other day. I said, listen, I go, you realize we've been doing this for 20-some years together. He's been doing it even longer. I said, in all that time and all that fight and all the things that we've gone through over the years, did you ever think, like, we'd actually be here? Like, there's a real sense of relief that the policies, that not just him, but the people that he's appointing to the offices, the Hegseths and the Kash Patels, Tulsi Gabbards and the Bobby Kennedys. It's just adults back in the room. They're not radicals.
Competent adults.
They're competent, but they just have common sense. But more than that, they are fighters, and they're not going to put up with the manipulations and the attacks and everything. And again, you talk about the media. Look at the Dems. They really expose themselves in these hearings as buffoons, as just strictly partisan hacks. They're not trying to get to the truth of anything. They're trying to attack people and trying to get the media to back them up, back their play on that, and it ain't working. People just see, like, I can see the answers they're giving me. Like, it makes sense to me. I like that. Yeah, I want to be healthy again. Yeah, I want to root out corruption in the FBI. Yeah, I want a military that actually works. I want to see Doge. I want to see them go through and clean up our mess that we've got financially, economically, and literally make America great again. It's not rocket science. It's not super difficult. It's all very easy, but for the longest time, for years and decades, we've been conditioned to believe that actually speaking truth and talking about the reality of things is something that we can't do because that's just offensive. Who cares? I don't care. It's time, and I'm incredibly happy to see it, and I want to see more.
Now, Jody, you mentioned you fought a large legal battle. You had gotten arrested, and you began that. The guy that I spoke to that was with the Bell Bonds Company, that was the first one to turn himself into Atlanta, he immediately spent over $1 million defending himself. And he said, Joe, I just couldn't go anymore. And when we talked, he said, they basically set in front of me a deal. If I admitted guilt, they would back off of me, and they would stop. So he said, at that moment, I either knew I was going to go bankrupt and lose everything I had, or I had to back up. He turned himself in. He signed a thing, and they charged him $5,000. $5,000. But they also made him agree that he would not get involved in anything political for a period of time. They took his voice away. Did you ever feel that occurred during your process of dealing with the government?
Well, what they did with me was, they allowed me to turn myself in, and because I wouldn't return their calls, so they had to work through my attorney. But they did a year of pretrial probation, and they put me with a $50,000 bond. I broke nothing, stole nothing, hurt no one. I went inside for like 10 minutes. $50,000 bond hanging over my head. And then 2 years post-trial. Well, I didn't go to trial because, like you said, they try to manipulate you into giving in between what it costs you in attorney's fees and what you're looking at in fines and restitution and yada yada. So in the end, though, the only thing that I pled guilty to was misdemeanor trespass, which I did go inside of the Capitol building. I wasn't denying that I did that, but that's all I did. And I did plead guilty to that, and I paid my fines, I paid my restitution, I had my legal fees, I had the trauma of going through the whole saga. But like I say, I feel I was one of the lucky ones. And yes, it's the people's house, and we should have a right to go into the people's house. As I didn't see any barricades, I didn't push through any barricades, and it was in front of me. And if my government hadn't tear gassed me, I probably wouldn't have gone in. But I felt that was the only option I had to get away from it, and so therefore I did. But, when you're going through the process and you're dealing with the FBI and the prosecutors and the judge, they don't really care what your story is. They just wanted blood. And I was one of the little people. Here I am, a senior citizen, and how much damage can I do? But they didn't care. They didn't care. They didn't want to hear about getting tear gassed or anything. The only time it was mentioned was they had email or a post that I put on to let my family and friends know that I was okay, because I know they're watching this all on TV unfold, was that I got tear gassed and I was back to the hotel safe. And even the judge said she wasn't putting that on there, out there bragging. She was just simply stating a fact to let people know that she was safe, where the prosecutor was wanting to beat me up for that big time. But, yeah, the process was, as far as the justice is concerned, it wasn't doled out by any stretch of the imagination. to be fair. Like I said, a misdemeanor trespass, $50,000 bond. But it was what it was, and that's what they did with a lot of them. I forget how many charges I had against me initially, but that's what they did. They reduce it down to what they think you'll sign off on, because we were the little ones, the little fish in the sea, and they just wanted us to be held accountable and to pay a good price for what they claim we did. So, yeah, I signed a document saying that, I was guilty of misdemeanor trespass. Yes, my voice was taken away from me. I was told I couldn't go to D.C. I was put on a strict travel where I couldn't leave the state. I have a home in New Hampshire. And if I did go, I was given 30-day maximum travel. And I had to tell them how many pieces of toilet paper I used while I was gone. Seriously. And I had my probation officer coming and banging on my door at 7 o'clock in the morning, so all my neighbors would sit there, But it was demeaning. That's what they were aiming to do, is to demean all of us.
And I think the big thing would be to put the fear in others out here like this, to think if you speak up, you're going to get the same reaction. And it's funny you say that, because the guy that I'm talking about had to sign a thing to plead to a misdemeanor, $5,000 fine, but he would stay off of election issues for several years. And I think it was 5 years. Well, the election would pass by then, and he wouldn't have his voice. But this guy had video of them actually sitting there with ballots with just the president's name checked, and he showed it. But that was considered a crime in the state of Georgia. Isn't it funny how the election changed, though, in 2024?
The whole thing was make it too big to rig.
Right.
They couldn't cheat enough.
Right. Let me ask you both of this, and then we want to open it up to the public. At what time did you feel in the election that President Trump was going to win this thing?
That's a good question. Listen, I walked into election night, and I knew in my bones that there was no chance we would know that night. And I fully expected the same shenanigans, because usually that's how they do it. You see in any close election, they wait and wait and wait. And so they find out really how many votes they are behind, and then they go out and find that plus one, and then claim that they won the election, which we saw happen in 2020. You see, everyone's seen that graph. Come on, man, that's insanity. It doesn't happen like that in the natural world. I fully expected that, and I forget what time was it, maybe 1 or 2 a.m. when they called Pennsylvania. That was it. It was it. No one was more shocked than me. Honestly, I did not expect that. So my call on 2020 was 100% spot on. My call on 24 was not even close.
I think for about a week there, I kept thinking I was going to cut the news on, and they were going to say, the president lost. We found some more votes, and Kamala is now our president. We were going to see a shift. I really thought that was going to occur, because we sat at Palm Beach that night and watched it, and I got to do it with my 18-year-old girl who voted for the first time. Yeah. And it was such an amazing experience, and you felt the momentum. And I've always been told, when a train's coming down the track, what do? You get off the track. Yeah. That train was coming. So it was a great time seeing it.
It was real interesting, because it was, yes, it was happy and we were jubilant and all that, but it was really more than anything just a sense of relief. Like, okay, things are right in the world, and it's like, yeah, of course he won, and I feel like that's really carried over these last few months. I can see it. I live in D.C. I can see it in the city. I don't know if you guys experience the same thing here, but it's a different city. Yeah. The last 4 years were dark. It was really bad energy there. And recently, since November, it's just like, I can only describe it as a happy place, which I've never said that about D.C. before. Maybe the first time ever.
Now, Dan, we were up there, and this is something really to pay attention to and hear. We were up there, and I cut on CNN. I didn't cut on CNN, cut on CNN, and it showed protesters protesting President Trump, and they were in short sleeves. They were in. If you pay attention to these things, look at, they were in short sleeves. I wasn't wearing a short sleeve up there. I was freezing my tail off. But did you ever see that going on in D.C. when you were there? Did you see all this massive protesting that they were trying to portray?
No, I saw a little bit because they started bringing back the, and I was actually surprised because I was driving to an event and I saw some women with the, the pussy hats that they had, and I was like, oh, they're going somewhere. Apparently, they were congregating to do a march or something. I didn't see it, although in 16, 17, I saw quite a bit of it.
Yeah.
I saw it. They were basically trying to burn down the city, looting, rioting, breaking whatever they could, harassing people, starting fight. It was crazy.
Yeah.
None of that this time. Haven't
None.
seen it. And if they were there protesting, God love them, and it's their right. And
But the
we'll let
news
them do
showed a
that.
totally different
Oh, yeah,
thing.
of
It was
course.
crazy.
Yeah.
Jody, what about you? When did you see the change in the? When did you start feeling that this was going to happen?
Well, like I said, I stayed up in New Hampshire campaigning. I did not come back to Florida until I got here the night before the last day of early voting so that I could go to the poll and vote, early voting as we were being told. And, the whole time I was up north, I had people constantly saying, how are you feeling? They were looking for reassurance. And I tried to be as positive as I could about it because I could not imagine anything else happening but him winning. I couldn't fathom him not winning. And when I came back, it was the same thing. I had people texting me, emailing me, calling me. I can't forecast what's going to happen. Nobody knew what was going to happen that night. But as far as him winning, I feel the same way that Dan does. It's like when Pennsylvania was called, I went, hallelujah. This may be it. But as you said, for a week or so after, I was still waiting for these magical ballots to come out of somewhere and them to say, oh no, we got to do recounts, blah, 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 blah. And so you still kind of held your breath. But boy, oh boy, what a difference it is out there. The
It's America
atmosphere.
again.
We're back.
Chuck, do we have a minute to do a couple of questions? Yeah.